Under the vast, star-strewn sky of the Montana plains, where the wind carried secrets older than the Rockies, Elias Hawthorne rode his weathered mare through the twilight. The ranch, once a bustling heartbeat of life with the lowing of cattle and the laughter of his late wife, Clara, now echoed with silence, broken only by the creak of saddle leather and the distant howl of coyotes. Elias was 62, his hands calloused like ancient leather, his eyes etched with lines from too many sunrises chasing dreams that had long since faded. Clara had been taken by the cancer 3 years back, leaving him to tend the acres alone, a man adrift in a sea of golden grass that whispered of what was lost. That evening, as the moon hung low like a silver locket, Elias spotted her, a lone figure stumbling along the fence line, her silhouette fragile against the horizon. She was young, maybe 30, with hair the color of autumn wheat tangled by the wind, and clothes that spoke of city streets rather than open ranges, a faded denim jacket over a simple white blouse, jeans torn at the knees. She clutched her side, her steps faltering, as if the earth itself were pulling her down. Elias urged his horse forward, his heart quickening not with fear, but with that old rancher's instinct, the unyielding call to mend what was broken. "Ma'am. You all right?" he called, dismounting with a grunt, his boots sinking into the soft soil. She turned, her face pale as moonlight, eyes wide and shadowed, like she'd seen ghosts in the daylight. A faint smile tugged at her lips, though pain etched deep furrows around them. "I'm lost," she whispered, her voice carrying the soft lilt of the South, warm like honeysuckle on a summer porch. "But don't worry about me. Just keep going." Elias frowned, stepping closer. Up close, he saw the blood seeping through her fingers where she pressed against her ribs, a gash, deep and jagged, perhaps from a fall or worse. "Lost ain't no reason to bleed out on my land. Come on, let's get you to the house." He reached out, but she recoiled, her breath hitching. "No," she said firmly, though her knees buckled. "I don't want pity. I've had enough of that." Her eyes met his, fierce and unyielding, the kind of gaze that could tame a wild mustang. "But if you're the type who fixes fences and feeds strays, do it. Help me because you can, not because you have to." Her words hung in the air like the first note of a hymn, simple and profound. "Do it." Elias paused, the phrase echoing in his chest, stirring memories of Clara's voice urging him through lean winters and broken machinery. Who was this woman, appearing like a mirage in his solitude? He nodded, slipping an arm around her waist to steady her, careful as if handling fine china. As his rough palm brushed her arm, skin soft and fever-warm against his calluses, something inexplicable happened. The world blurred at the edges. The wind stilled. The stars above sharpened into diamonds, frozen in their dance. Time, that relentless river carving canyons through a man's life, stopped. In that suspended breath, Elias saw flashes, not his own memories, but hers. A childhood in Georgia red clay, chasing fireflies with a father who taught her to mend broken wings on birds. A city job in Atlanta, suits and skyscrapers, where she poured kindness into strangers, coffee for the homeless man on the corner, rides for single mothers late for work. Then, the shadow, a diagnosis, stage 4, the doctor's voices flat as they handed her pamphlets on making peace. She'd fled west, driving until the gas ran dry, seeking one last taste of wide-open freedom before the end. Her name was Lila, and in her eyes, Elias glimpsed the selflessness that had defined her, giving until she had nothing left, loving fiercely because tomorrow wasn't promised. The moment shattered as a coyote's yip pierced the night, time rushing back like a dam breaking. Lila swayed against him, oblivious to the vision that had gripped him. "Thank you," she murmured, leaning into his support as they made the slow trek to the ranch house. Elias's mind reeled. How had a touch unlocked her story? Was it grief playing tricks, or something deeper, a thread of humanity weaving through the veil between souls? He didn't know, but for the first time in years, his heart felt less like a barren field and more like soil ready for rain. Inside the modest cabin, lit by the warm glow of a kerosene lamp, Elias eased Lila onto the worn plaid couch. The room smelled of pine and aged wood, Clara's quilt draped over the armrest like a guardian spirit. He fetched his kit, bandages, antiseptic from mending countless calves, and knelt before her, rolling up her sleeve with gentle hands. "This might sting," he warned, dabbing the wound. She winced but didn't pull away, her gaze fixed on the flickering flame. "Tell me about this place," she said, her voice steadying. "Why does a man like you live so far from everything?" Elias chuckled softly, a sound rusty from disuse. "Everything. Out here, the everything is the nothing. Space to think, to heal." He paused, tape securing the dressing. "Lost my wife to the big sea, thought it'd take me under too. But the land, it don't let go easy." Lila's eyes softened, mirroring his pain. "Cancer," she echoed, her fingers tracing the quilt stitches. "It steals pieces of you before it takes the whole. My mama went the same way. I became a nurse after, figured if I couldn't save her, maybe I could save someone else's someone." She smiled faintly. "But lately, it's like I'm the one needing mending." The confession hung between them, raw and real. Elias sat back on his heels, the weight of her words settling like dew on grass. In the quiet, he realized the unexpected turn. This stranger wasn't just passing through, she was a mirror, reflecting his own buried aches. Kindness, he'd always believed, was for the young and hopeful, not a grizzled rancher who'd bartered his heart for solitude. Yet here she was, urging him with those 3 words, "Do it," to remember the man Clara had loved. As the night deepened, they talked. Lila shared stories of hospital shifts, holding hands through the dark hours, whispering encouragements to the dying. "It's not about fixing," she said, "it's about showing up. A touch, a word, it says, you're not alone." Elias listened, his guard cracking like dry earth under spring rain. He spoke of Clara's laugh, how she'd dance in the kitchen to old radio tunes, turning chores into joy. For the first time, the memories didn't cut, they warmed. But dawn brought a twist Elias hadn't foreseen. Lila tried to rise, insisting on leaving. "You've done enough. I won't be a burden." Her voice cracked, eyes glistening, not from pain, but resolve. She rummaged in her jacket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. "This is my will. Silly, I know, but, if something happens out here." She pressed it into his hand, her fingers lingering. "Promise me you'll scatter my ashes where the wildflowers grow. I want to be part of something that blooms." Elias's throat tightened. Ashes? The word clawed at him, dredging up Clara's final days. "You're not dying on my watch," he growled, but his voice betrayed him, thick with unspoken fear. In that moment, realization dawned, Lila's selflessness wasn't a shield, it was her light, shining even as it flickered. And he'd hidden behind fences, letting life pass him by. "Do it," she'd said. "Do what?" "Live again. Help her chase one last dream." Outside, the first light painted the hills gold. Elias saddled 2 horses, his hands steady despite the storm in his chest. "You're not wandering off alone. We're going to the ridge, Clara's favorite spot. Wildflowers everywhere this time of year. But first, we ride like the wind owns us." Lila's laugh was a melody, tentative but true. As they mounted, the sun crested, and Elias felt it, a spark, fragile as a match in the breeze, igniting the embers of his soul. The trail to the ridge wound like a lover's promise through aspen groves and sagebrush seas, the air crisp with the scent of earth awakening. Elias led the way on his mare, Bess, while Lila followed on an old gray gelding named Smoky, her posture easing with each stride despite the bandage peeking from her jacket. The wound was shallow, he'd assured her, a barbed wire snag, likely from her desperate hike, but her pallor told a deeper tale. Cancer, she'd hinted in the night's confessions, had sent her on this odyssey, a final rebellion against sterile hospital beds and pitying glances. Yet as the horse's hooves drummed a rhythmic heartbeat on the path, Elias glimpsed her spirit unbroken. She hummed an old folk tune, her voice weaving through the pines like sunlight through leaves. Halfway up, they paused at a meadow where lupins nodded in the breeze, purple sentinels guarding secrets. Lila dismounted gingerly, sinking to her knees amid the flowers, her fingers brushing petals as if greeting old friends. "This," she breathed, "this is why I came west. To feel small, but alive." Elias joined her, spreading Clara's quilt on the grass, a patchwork of memories stitched with love. They unpacked a simple lunch, cheese, apples from the orchard, bread baked that morning with hands that still remembered Clara's recipes. As they ate, the conversation turned to dreams deferred. Lila spoke of a life unlived, the novel she'd never finished, the children she'd imagined but never held, the volunteer trips to build homes in forgotten villages. "I gave everything to others," she said, eyes distant, because holding back felt like hoarding. "But now, I wonder if I forgot to give to myself." Her vulnerability cracked something in Elias, a profound realization that his own isolation wasn't strength, but a quiet surrender. He'd buried his pain under chores and sunsets, telling himself it was noble, selfless even. But what of the humanity that Clara had cherished in him? The boy who'd once carved whistles from willow branches for neighborhood kids, the man who'd driven through blizzards to deliver hay to struggling neighbors. An unexpected turn came with the wind's shift. A rumble echoed from the east, thunderheads building, dark and brooding, the kind that could flood washes in minutes. Lila's face drained of color, not from the storm, but memory. "Storms like this, they remind me of the night Mama passed. Lightning split the sky, and I promised her I'd live bold." She stood, swaying, clutching a wildflower stem. "Elias, if this is my last ride, do it. Take me higher. Let me see the world from the top." He saw it then, the plea beneath her words. Not death, but defiance. Time stopped again, not in touch, but in the raw honesty of her gaze. Flashes returned, her nursing a stray dog back to health in her tiny apartment, reading bedtime stories to orphaned kids at the shelter, always the giver, never the taker. But beneath it, a girl yearning for her own miracle. Elias's heart pounded. "All right," he said, voice rough as gravel. "But we do it together. No more running solo." They pressed on, the sky darkening as rain began to patter, turning the trail to mud. Lightning forked overhead, illuminating Lila's determination like a halo. Elias rode close, one hand steadying her saddle when she faltered. At the ridge's crest, they crested the world, a panorama of endless valleys, the ranch a distant speck below, eagles wheeling on thermals like guardians of the infinite. Lila gasped, tears mingling with raindrops on her cheeks. "It's everything." In that sacred hush, the emotional climax unfolded. Lila turned to him, pressing the envelope into his palm once more. "Scatter them here, when the time comes. But Elias, promise me something more. Don't let this place, or you, fade. Find someone to share the sunrises. Be the kindness you gave me today." Her words pierced him, a call to generosity he'd ignored too long. With trembling hands, he tore the envelope open, not ashes, but letters, unsent notes to loved ones, dreams scribbled in haste. One was blank, addressed to "the stranger who saved me." Elias's eyes burned. The twist hit like thunder, Lila wasn't dying today. Her diagnosis was real, but she'd hidden treatments in her pack, pills rattling like hope deferred. She'd come west not to end, but to begin anew, to test if life could still surprise her. "I lied a little," she confessed, laughing through sobs. "Not about the cancer. About giving up. When you touched me last night, it was like you saw me. The real me. And I thought, maybe I can fight one more round." Compassion surged in Elias, pure and transformative. He pulled her into an embrace, rain-soaked, heartfelt, the world blurring once more, but this time in shared light. "Then fight from here," he said, voice breaking. Stay. The guest room's yours. We'll call the dock in Billings, get you strong. And those letters? We'll mail M. But the blank one, write it with me. About second chances. Time, that thief, resumed its flow, but slower now, gentler. The storm broke around them, washing clean the doubts, leaving rainbows arching over the plains. They rode back as the sun pierced the clouds, Lila's hand occasionally brushing his, a touch that no longer stopped time, but stretched it, infinite with possibility. Months later, as autumn painted the hills crimson, Lila stood strong in the kitchen, chopping onions for stew, her treatment underway, scars fading like old wounds. Elias watched from the doorway, a new lightness in his step. He'd hired help for the ranch, reached out to old friends, even joined a grief group in town, small acts of selflessness turned outward, rippling like stones in a pond. One evening, under that same moon, they sat on the porch, stars winking approval. Lila read from her finished novel, words born of their shared ridgetop vow. Kindness isn't a transaction, she said, closing the book. It's the spark that says we're all connected, across fences, storms, even heartbeats. Elias nodded, his hand finding hers. In her, he'd found not just a survivor, but a reminder. Humanity's power lies in the do-it moments, the touches that bridge loneliness, the generosities that bloom eternal. And in that quiet truth, hope took root, wild and unyielding as the Montana wildflowers, promising that no matter the darkness, dawn always follows.